Okay, there should be a microphone there. Cool. All right. I'm just double checking. Sorry, I was saying that Microsoft just updated everything. They just updated a big April update. Okay, there should be a microphone there. All right, now we go. Now we're good. Now we're good. Cool. Cool, 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 cool. All right, so that's going on. How's it going? We just got the reviews just popped out for Deadpool. So if you guys have seen my RT recap series, we will be doing that live. Actually, that's going to be taking the place of a couple stories that would have liked to have done, but that's okay. That's okay. We're gonna do this live because it is a divisive movie at this point. That's a very divisive movie. So let me just get this prepped up here. But seriously, if you guys haven't seen my RT recap series, what I do there is I go through the top five. I go through the top 5 positive and the top 5 negative reviews, and then give an assessment of it. It's actually a lot of fun. It is actually a lot of fun. There should be sound now. There should be sound. I do apologize for that. Obviously, that was Windows. The new updates. OBS had to kind of catch up. Just as a heads up, I will be announcing this again at the end of the episode. If you guys want to check out the Mundane Mysteries cold case stream that is happening roughly immediately following this over on Forbidden Knowledge. So that will be something to look forward to if you're into that, sort of thing, guys, if you're into that sort of thing. There is a lot to kind of go through here. Ultimately, I'm not going to get to every story tonight. I realized last night that I went through 6 stories. I posted 6 individual videos. That was far too much. I feel like I was over inundating people, but this is stuff, and a lot of these again are stories that are good as their own video. So it kind of is an interesting thing as I wade myself through the news and everything else, making sure that people don't feel over inundated when they come in. That's one of the things. Let me just update. Actually, I want to update YouTube live dashboard here. I want to actually update the stuff. So, would I be interested in a movie where Alex Jones was a fictionalized version of himself? I think that'd be okay. Okay, and we're gonna go. Okay, there we go. I just changed that up just to the Deadpool 2 review. As always, if you guys do want to help support the channel, which is entirely not at all forced, you can do through Streamlabs, which is streamlabs.com/mundanemat, link below. Or there's always Patreon, patreon.com/mundanemat, which is a good way to go about that too. If that's something you are interested in, again, that is nothing there that we haven't, it's forced on. So without further ado here, I say let's jump into the first story of the night, which I just want to, that's the wrong one. There we go. Shows you how much I'm paying attention tonight. But Margot Kidder. Margot Kidder passed away today at the age of 69, and that is very much an iconic loss, right? Margot Kidder passing away at the age of 69, because this is an iconic woman. This is an iconic actress. Granted, only really for one thing, but that's not a bad thing. It's like Christopher Reeves is known as Superman. You know, you're not going to sit there and go, oh, I really loved him, or I'll always remember him most for being in the ABC adaptation of Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window, or that John Carpenter Village of the Damned movie. Like these things that you have seen, but you're not going to look back on those 100% with nostalgia and go, yes, this is where it's at. This is what the kind of thing that I want, to remember the person. So Margot Kidder did pass away today. I just wanted to talk about that. Say that my condolences go out to her family, her friends, her colleagues. I actually had the chance to see her once back in 2012. I went to, I think it was like the Comic Kazi or Stan Lee's Comic Con, whatever it was called back in 2012. And they did a screening of Richard Donner's, the Superman 2 Richard Donner cut. And afterward, Margot Kidder was there with a few other cast members, giving a Q&A about the movie. And it was really cool to get her take on it, to see her talk about this. And unfortunately, things just didn't you know, like in life, 69 is a young age, and things just didn't pan out. So I just want to say, rest in peace, Margot Kidder. It's very, very tragic, and I hope that, hope wherever you are, that you find peace, because you know, it's I think it was cancer that killed her. Yeah, it's sad nonetheless to lose someone, because this is iconic. This is iconic, you know. And you get to a point where you feel like Hollywood starts, you know, like life starts taking away celebrities versus giving us new ones, right? So there's definitely that. So let's jump over here to a story that I did want to cover last night, and I unfortunately did not get around to covering it because it was too late in the day. But I want to talk about this here: the Star Wars show for the Disney direct-to-consumer streaming service, right? The one that Jon Favreau is working on. We get a little bit more update about what's going on with it, and to me, that's super fascinating because I really want to see what happens with this. I want to see what Jon Favreau is going to bring to the show, considering that he's an executive producer on the Orville, as well as directed the pilot episode. He also worked on what was it? That Revolution show, which was an interesting concept. I think it was part of the Amberverse. It had a couple seasons on NBC, ultimately failed to get a finale, was eventually canceled. But it was an interesting concept. So I'm kind of curious to see what's going to happen about this one here. So it says, while at the world premiere for Lucasfilm Solo: A Star Wars Story, Jon Favreau gave some of the first story details for his upcoming Star Wars television series. Favreau, who will write and executive produce the new series for Disney's upcoming streaming service, revealed that the series will tell stories with new characters that will take place 7 years after the event of 1983 Star Wars Episode 6, The Return of the Jedi. And that's interesting. That's interesting that it will take place 7 years later. Now, I don't know if there's a significance to 7 years later. I don't know if there's anything like that. But ultimately, I believe when it comes to a storytelling perspective, you're going to want to give it a bit of time once we get past the Return of the Jedi, to kind of give it time past, you know, the immediate aftermath of what happened. Probably wanting to know, you know, like we're going to probably hear a bit about Leia, you know, General Leia and General Solo and Little Ben. Right, we're going to hear probably about Luke and the Jedi Temple and how he's trying to like rebuild that. You know, we're going to probably hear a couple of these things. Admiral Akbar might surprisingly be around before his unceremonious exit in last year's Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Who knows what kind of little things are going to be told. But 7 years later is an interesting number for me, just because it's not like, you know, 25 years later, like where it could be a prequel leading into The Force Awakens. It's going to be set in this in-between chapter where I'm pretty certain we're going to see a lot coming out of the Star Wars story group about this. And I think that's going to end up being something that is going to be a lot of fun for fans. Now, it does say here that even though Star Wars has Clone Wars and Rebels under its belt, as well as the upcoming Star Wars Resistance, Favreau will be the franchise's first live-action series made in television format. So if I had to guess here, and I had to speculate, and that's a lot of what I do, I'm going to sit there and say that this series is going to end up being one contained story, you know, probably spread out over who knows how many episodes, 10 to 13, somewhere in there probably. And what would it tell? I mean, like what kind of story would it tell? I mean, we know that there's still going to be, you know, the Empire is going to still have admirals and generals that are going to have control over their own particular, you know, Star Destroyers, because it's not like they destroyed the entire fleet. The Empire was the Empire. The Empire was far-reaching. Surely there are going to be remnants left. Surely those remnants are going to become villains in their own right, trying to stay afloat. Surely those villains might become, I don't want to sit there and 100% say like space pirates, but I'm thinking space pirates, because what are you going to do? I mean, imagine like, you know, like a tricked out freaking Star Destroyer that now you got no master, you got a crew. All right. Like you got no Vader because Vader's dead. You got no Emperor because Palpatine's been freaking, you know, he's been electrocuted and whatnot. And now they're like, okay, well, how do you maintain control? Well, clearly, like there's going to be mutinies, and there's going to be riots, and people are going to flee, and there's going to be the hardcore group of people who are left. So it'd be interesting to kind of tell that story from the perspective of maybe the Rebel Alliance, or which would be now known as the New Republic, would go out and deal with this kind of thing. And granted, I have no idea. Like if I was going to tell the story, that's kind of what I would tell. about trying to maybe stop another uprising of the of the empire, maybe, and also kind of like lean into what could be the small idea, the inkling that led into the First Order, because as we know, Star Wars is cyclical, and these things are going to kind of bound to come back around and whatnot. So I'd be interested to see what happens with that and how they're going to play it out. I'm also very curious to know what the budget's going to be. I know that's a very odd thing to say, but I'm curious what the budget is. I think it's going to give us a very interesting idea about what just how much money Disney's willing to spend on this. Now, yesterday I talked about how Disney doesn't need Fox for this particular service, this direct-to-consumer streaming service to be profitable, right, or to be off the ground, essentially. But what we do know is that they're going to need around 30 million people in order to make it sustainable, right, to make it profitable. And now, will Disney get 30 million people to watch this series? Oh yeah, dude, 100%. 100% that's going to happen. In no way, shape, or form are they not going to do it, because you're not like, people are going to sit there and go, oh, Disney content, cool. Oh, this cool. Oh, that cool. Like, I'm going to come in Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel, content, and never mind the fact that we're probably going to see a bunch of whole new Marvel shows coming out. Sometime, those are going to be announced probably over the summer, I would assume. But that's pretty much where we are with this one. I'm curious where Favreau is going to take us, and I'm very anxious to know more. So obviously, keep watching the space for updates about what to expect from that. But jumping over here into one that I just want to talk about today. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but Ben Affleck, I'm getting a little bit perturbed at Affleck at this point, because it feels like a lot of the will they won't they second season of a sitcom where where the two leads realize they like each other, but they just can't find a way to make it work, right? And if they do, it feels premature and it feels kind of show killing, like Raising Hope. But in this case, it's not two romantic leads, it's Ben Affleck and Batman, and whether or not he's going to continue playing the character. And I don't know about you, but I'm just getting really damn frustrated with this, because what we see here is this report, this rumor. It's a rumor from BatmanNews.com. Take it with a grain of salt, that Affleck wants to keep playing Batman. Now it's been a rumor that Affleck doesn't want to play Batman, right? That's been the rumor. Keep in mind, at Comic-Con last year, he went up there on stage and he was like, "I am Batman." He was like, "I am Batman," and he locked it down. And then we've been hearing rumors over the course of the past year about whether or not this is true. And so now we get the rumor on the other side, well, he actually still wants to play Batman. And I think part of this has to do, well, this article kind of goes into it a bit, but it says here that the Ben Affleck Batman roller coaster never stops. That is true. For over a year now, there has been reports that Affleck's days as Batman were numbered. Affleck himself even admitted he intends to do the last movie on his contract and find a graceful and cool way to exit the role, but could he have had a change of heart? Now, he talked about having a cool and graceful exit, but that necessarily wasn't tied into just doing one more movie. I do think that particular quote was taken out of context. Now, according to a Twitter user at DanielRPK, who has proven to be a reliable source before, Affleck wants to stick around as the DC Extended Universe's Batman. Daniel cautions that this is just a rumor, so keep that in mind. And how bad is it? How fucking bad is it that that the rumor has to be an actor wants to continue playing a part that he's currently in contract for, right? Like, isn't that kind of funny how that whole thing's going to play out? It's like, it's so weird to me. But he says here, tag it under rumor for now. I hear Ben Affleck now wants to stick around as the DCEU's Batman, which Affleck is a card-carrying Batman aficionado. Critics and fans love him as Batman. Not all critics and not all fans, obviously, but pretty much everyone I've talked to has been like, I love him as Batman. Bruce Wayne is kind of up in the air based upon his two performances as the character. I can understand that. His character arc in Batman v Superman I thought was really good. Where he was in Justice League in terms of like that's going to leave a mark is kind of like a little bit on the dumb side. I didn't really care much for that one because I'm like, Batman's got jokes now. Batman's, he's a comic relief character. Like, let's not go overboard here. It can work in certain ways, like when he's talking to Commissioner Gordon and Gordon says, it's good to see you playing with friends. Then Aquaman comes over and it's like, oh, you're dressed as a bat. I can dig it. You know, and he says, oh, that may not last. Like, that's a good quip. That's a fun quip. And that's one of the things that I think ultimately is going to work out well for the character, for the actor. But it's interesting because this guy goes on to say that just last week he wrote a piece about Affleck's future as Batman. He was expected to make a final appearance in Flashpoint, but with that movie seemingly dead, we wondered if we would see Affleck as a Dark Knight again. If this rumor is true, it sounds that Affleck may be thinking about extending his contract. And here's the thing: is the Flashpoint movie was a really bad idea, right? It was. It just simply was. Like, I understand why they wanted to do Flashpoint. It's a cool story. But they announced Flashpoint the movie right after, right around the same time the Flash TV show pushed the Flashpoint, storyline through season 3, and it wasn't really working in that format, right? It just didn't really work out very well because they deviated quite a bit from it. And as a result of that, I think there's probably some reworking of the situation inside of Warner's, especially now under Walter Hamada's reign, about what to expect from the character, what to expect from Flash's movie, now that they've got the guys who wrote Spider-Man Homecoming and directed Game Night and the reboot of Vacation on board to handle it. It's going to be clearly more fun, clearly more down to earth, and clearly more comical. And we're seeing that also with like Shazam, right? We're seeing Warner's trying to do this pivot, trying to do this this change where they go from like the dark brooding series in order to make it more lighthearted and fun, similar to how Marvel's done it. And that to me ultimately is a bad move. The kind of grimdark take on it between, Man of Steel and Batman v Superman worked for me. It did. It really, really worked for me. I liked the idea because it was leading into the Justice League kind of being more lighthearted, finding its moral center, finding its grounding, finding the team, and realizing that it's not just a grim, dark world out there. You can do this. You can save humanity with friends, with family, right? Like that kind of angle I really enjoyed. We never got to see it brought to its full fruition simply because of Joss Whedon and how they handled that, but I'm hoping Affleck sticks around because I want to see him and Matt Reeves the Batman. I want to see what they do with that. I want him to write, direct, and star in his own movie. But here's what I think. I think the rumored rehab stint for alcoholism really messed with them. I think Live by Night completely crashing and burning and costing Warner Brothers $75 million. I think really, really kind of struck his ego, and it really kind of made him go, I don't know if this is what I want to do anymore. I don't know if this is how I want to, go about this anymore, and kind of brought him to this weird place. That's where I think he's found himself right now, and he may be coming out of that funk. It's been over a year, and maybe that could be where this rumor is coming from, where he's like, no, I'm Batman. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen, and I hope that I'm right, because I'd like to see him take on the mantle all the way till Terry McGinnis comes around. Because here's the thing, Warner. Come here, Warner. I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Everybody wants Batman Beyond. So bring in old Affleck. It could be Fatleck. You know what I mean? Bring him in, okay? Have him be old, bitter again, right? None of this like jovial, I love my fellow man shit, but just bring him back to being an old, cynical bastard, and then have him bring in Terry McGinnis. That's what we want. I'm not the only one. I guarantee you I'm not the only one. And if you don't believe me, definitely check the comments. All right, let me give a second here. Ezra Miller cast as the Flash was a bad idea. I liked him as the Flash. I thought he was pretty good. In the role. I enjoyed what he brought to the table on that one. I did. I liked it quite a bit. So, let's see. Okay, let's go into the next one here. It is very warm in here tonight. For some reason, my office is exceptionally hot, which sucks. All right, so what we've got here is Guillermo del Toro is creating a horror series for Netflix. This is cool news because Del Toro can do horror. He can do gothic horror. He can do fantasy horror. He can do all of these things, and I'd like to see him take that to a place where he's not going to end up getting hosed by the studio system. Because I always feel like he gets hosed, and Netflix has been very good to him. If you haven't seen Troll Hunters, it's pretty badass. Like, Troll Hunters is pretty great. Now, it says here, fresh off winning Best Picture and Best Director for his passion project, The Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro has announced his next enterprise, a horror anthology series for Netflix titled Guillermo del Toro Presents 10 After Midnight. It's a collection of Oscar-winning filmmakers' personally curated stories, described as both equally sophisticated and horrific. Del Toro, who previously collaborated with the streaming service on Troll Hunters, is listed as a creator. He'll also write and direct certain episodes, while a team of top horror writers and new filmmakers will take over others. So, in essence, it makes sense, right? So this is kind of going back. If I'm going to sit there and, like, throw out like some some comparisons like the Twilight Zone and Rod Serling, it kind of feels like that. It kind of feels like that. Horror anthology is cool. I mean, look, Black Mirror is an anthology series. Charlie Booker writes each episode, but he doesn't direct each one. But he does plot out where things go, and he definitely brings that dark, cynical British mindset to it, and it works out well for it, and people like the anthology. Back in the day, you had Twilight Zone, you had Outer Limits, then you had the reboot of Outer Limits in the 1990s, which wasn't bad. There was a kind of an anthology series that I think it was on Showtime or something, Masters of Horror. I think that was on Showtime. That was an anthology series. We've seen these kind of things, happen every once in a blue moon, and some work and some don't. But Black Mirror clearly works, and I think that that's going to be a key indicator here, except for dealing with the dark side of technology and where it can take humanity in very messed up ways. We're going into dark horror, which I think Guillermo can bring to the table. Now, it says here, 10 After Midnight is a dream come true for Del Toro. One of his favorite shows and biggest inspirations is fellow horror and anthology series Night Gallery, an episode of which scared him so much he literally just peed like a hose. Night Gallery was good. I did overlook that one too. Winning an Oscar hasn't slowed him down one bit. On top of Midnight, Del Toro is co-writing and directing the Nightmare Alley remake, producing Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, based on the kids' book of the same name. And he also signed a deal with DreamWorks, which is good for fans of his Tales of Arcadia series, which that's the Troll Hunters one. They're finishing up Troll Hunters with season 3. That's going to kind of round out the story for like the main team. And then he's got like 2 other shows set in that same world that they're currently making for Netflix, because that's, again, where things are just going these days. People happen to like these types of things. Here's the thing, though. He's working on the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which is cool, because that was one of my favorite book series as a kid. I remember just going to like my elementary school library and like reading it during, study time and whatever. Like, yeah, this is back in the 90s. They had these books inside the library. You could go and read the kind of scary stories that you wouldn't want to tell yourself while, trying to go to sleep. It was totally fine to put into a school library. But Heather Has Two Mommies was a huge no-no for Oregon back in 1991. So you've got that. And that's serious. I'm not even making that up. So I'd like to see that told as an anthology series more so than being a film. That would work as a show. But here's a bit of a concern. Del Toro, while he's good on his own, sometimes he attaches his name to projects that I think he does it just as a way for these movies to get out there. Back in the day, there was Splice, that movie that he came on as a producer to, that was not very good. There was that one about like the not the people under the stairs. That was obviously Wes Craven, but there was the one. It was like the teeth creatures or whatever that he produced, wasn't very good. I think sometimes Guillermo, he wants to help out filmmakers, so he'll kind of attach his name to their projects as a producer and use it as a way to sell it to distributors, but they're ultimately not very good. But this is an anthology series, like an anthology show, not feature films, which could actually work out better. If he's trying to find a way to farm new talent and find out if people can actually hack it inside of the industry writing horror, then writing something that is 45 minutes to an hour long and nailing it is a lot better than writing something that is an hour and a half to 2 hours long and not being able to tell the complete story. So, anthology, I think, is going to be good for him. It's going to be good for new talent. And I am really hoping that we get to see some cool, crazy shit coming out of it when it happens, because, you know, Netflix is going to support it, right? Netflix is going to be like, oh, you are the best director winner. You are the best picture winner. What do you want? Here's a blank check. Just go do your thing. But like I said, if Guillermo ends up putting his name on something, it has the tendency of being hit or miss in terms of from a producer standpoint. But if he is directly involved in it, I think it has a better shot of actually nailing what he wants it to nail, and I think that's okay, and I think that's going to be a lot of fun. So, coming over here to this particular story today is interesting when it deals with Birds of Prey. You know, the DCEU all-female team, but now we're getting that it's going to start in 2019 with an all-female crew. Expect there to be some pushback on this one, I think. I do expect there to be a bit of pushback on this, mostly because of you know, like, it's going to come across as well, kind of sexist, right? It is. I'm just saying it up front. So it says here, DC Films' Bird of Prey is currently eyeing a January 2019 production start date and looking to hire an all-female crew. Back in April, Warner Brothers and DC Film tapped Kathy Yan to direct Birds of Prey, so the move to get this up and running as quick as possible with an all-female crew is unsurprising. Warner's hired Bumblebee and shut-in writer Christina Hodson to pen one of the scripts for Harley Quinn Bird of Prey spinoff back in 2016. Birds of Prey has had multiple scripts, and each of them include Harley Quinn and Batgirl as the main character. So we know that they want to do, well, Batgirl. We know this. They want to introduce her in Birds of Prey. The thing here, though, I'm not going to lie, it would be best to probably put her in the movie that comes out on the 75th anniversary of Batman, which would be 2019. Having the movie come out in 2019, I think would be definitely honoring Batman, but introducing Batgirl in a way that does kind of tie in line with the origins of the original character. And by that, I mean Batman. Now, it says Birds of Prey will be the next film to feature Margot Robbie in the role of Harley Quinn, following the shakeup at DC Films after the disappointing box office performance for Justice League. It was reported in January that the studio was considering Birds of Prey film in addition to a spin-off film featuring Harley Quinn and the Joker as the next vehicle for Robbie's in the DC's current cinematic universe. The actress reportedly took an interest in Birds of Prey projects since she began to research her character in the role of Suicide Squad. She'll also produce the film under her Lucky Chap Entertainment banner as part of a first-look deal she has with the studio. And now it says, in DC Comics lore, Birds of Prey are an international crime-fighting team featuring heroines such as Oracle, Black Canary, and the Huntress. The comic book team currently consists of Black Canary, Huntress, and Lady Blackhawk, along with Hawk and Dove. So none of that really matters, I think. None of that ultimately is going to matter here in the long run about who's in what, because we know that Birds of Prey is going to basically feature Catwoman and Poison Ivy. I think that's what they're going for. You know, she'll be probably teaming up with Batgirl at some point in time, but they're going to also have other female characters. You know, they're not going to introduce Oracle just yet, so having it brought into that doesn't make a great deal of sense to me, right? They're titling a movie Birds of Prey that features, well, different characters than Harley Quinn, but they're making it a Harley Quinn movie. I still can't wrap my head around this from the perspective of it being a good thing. Like, doing a movie Harley Quinn and the Joker to me seems like a pretty good idea, because that at least plays up the relationship that they had in Suicide Squad, which worked out really well for audiences, as well as getting more of that type of storytelling. We're building her up as a character. Here, once again, we're seeing Harley Quinn pop up in an ensemble film where she will have to share screen time with lots of other characters. That inherently isn't a horrible thing, but I think Margot Robbie would want her to be in kind of a standalone, or at least not as large of an ensemble role as what we're doing here. It makes me wonder if they're afraid that Harley Quinn can't survive on her own, but they know that she's enough of a box office draw to where they are definitely, you know, gonna take a gamble on it. I just think Birds of Prey is the wrong movie to do this. I just, you know, there's that, but you also got here. Let's address the elephant in the room, because there's clearly going to be, the way this article is titled, the way that the story is structured. Obviously, the elephant here has to do with the all-female crew. Now, not to say they won't be able to find that in Hollywood. You will absolutely be able to find that. Whether it's in Hollywood, they have to fly people in from around the world. They're going to assemble a crew the way that they want, right? And that's not a bad thing at all. I'm not against it personally. But making that part of the story of the movie, I think, or part of the overall narrative of the film's journey from page to screen, is not going to end up well for Warner Brothers. Not as well as they think. Now, when it came to Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn was clearly the draw, right? Harley Quinn was what kept women coming back for more repeat viewings. There's a reason why the movie grossed over $700 million worldwide. It had a lot to do with the repeat viewings and women going to see the characters. So that makes sense as to why they want to have the females on the screen. Behind the camera, on the other hand, that's just identity politics pandering. It really is. Films should be a meritocracy. The best person hired for the job, the best crew hired for the job. Your goal as a filmmaker is to put these type of characters on the screen. Having an all-female crew doesn't necessarily mean that everything's going to turn out well. I mean, let's say, for example, Roger Deakins came along and was just like, I'm really a big Birds of Prey fan. I really love Suicide Squad. I'd love to come in and shoot this movie. And they're like, yeah, no, sorry there, Deakins. Can't do it. Can't bring you in. Can't because you don't got a vagina. That's you're gonna turn down someone like Deakins in order to get someone who is a woman. Like, it's just, that shouldn't ever be a thing in Hollywood, and it is right now, given where we currently find ourselves. So by having an all-female cast, by having an all-female crew, you're pushing that the identity politics stuff again, and that, to be fair, did not work out very well for Ghostbusters. Now, I'm not trying to equate the two, nor am I trying to make this a rant about Ghostbusters, but we know that Ghostbusters crashed and burned predominantly because of playing the cultural identity politics card, playing the gender politics card, and the constant doubling down. Now, you know what's going to come from this. Like, you know what people are going to say. And if the response from Margot Robbie or Kathy Yan or Walter Hamada or anyone else at DC is anything other than, like, we're leaving this to them to make it the way they want to make it, and if they bring up the female empowerment line, if they bring up any of that stuff, it's only going to set off this tinderbox. And if the DCEU, it can't really take that kind of negative fan hit, to be honest with you. But at the same time, and this is me kind of putting on a tinfoil hat, maybe that's not what they're after. Maybe it's not. Maybe by pushing it this way, they know they've got the protection from the movie bloggers. They got the protection from, like, the Me Too movement. They've got the protection from that sort of thing. They're going to be playing that up, again, as a piece of politics versus trying to tell a good story. That's what I don't like. I don't like it. If the best people for the job happen to all be women, and that's just kind of where you go in terms of hiring process, I'm not against that at all, period. But if you specifically seek to not hire the best people for the job because of their gender or gender identity, then that is wrong. And it doesn't send the statement you want to send it. And if you think that you're going to be completely protected by the movie bloggers, again, look at what happened to Ghostbusters. All I'm saying, and I'm sure many of you out there watching will agree with me, is you do not want to be Ghostbusters 2016. So if this is the angle you want to push, if this is the narrative you want to go out there with, you best be ready, because you're gonna end up getting a fair amount of shit. Seriously. All right. Obi-Wan Kenobi. This is a thing. This rumor is popping up again. Pop up the other day. I missed it, but I want to talk about it now. So an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie is in pre-production, begins shooting in 2019, ? Because this kind of stuff always just has a damn question mark next to it. This all popped up after the Solo world premiere the other day, and it's a big thing. So it says here, the Obi-Wan movie has yet to be officially announced by Lucasfilm or Disney, but it appears that the project is currently in the early stages of pre-production at Pinewood Studios in England, as well as Industrial Light and Magic. A new report has revealed that the movie will remain in pre-production while the filming of Star Wars 9 takes place this summer, and will go into filming in the spring of 2019. There is quite a bit of excitement for the Obi-Wan movie, which is a stark contrast to the announcement of Solo: A Star Wars Story, which was met with a divisive response from fans. I'm going to be realistic here. The Obi-Wan kind of met with the same kind of response. Met with a collective, oh, I mean, that'd be cool. Do we need it? Do you need it? Like, that's kind of the way I took it, right? Now, not to say that I'm not excited for this. I'm 100% on board if it's done in terms of like Obi-Wan, the Western. But this is kind of where we find ourselves looking at Lucasfilm and going like, oh, you bitches are out of ideas, right? Like, you are out of ideas. You only had a little bit to play with there. You done killed the EU. Now you're scrambling to keep those $1 billion blockbusters coming in, because that's ultimately where we're kind of finding ourselves right here. Don't get me wrong. As much as people have, as the idea of the Solo movie has kind of been viewed as a dumpster fire by people, I've been critical of it, but at the same time, I am wholly excited to see it next week. I understand what they're up to. They already have said Solo is going to be a trilogy, right? I called Solo being a trilogy months ago, before we even learned that Alden Ehrenreich was signed to 3 pictures, right? Before Ron Howard is talking about a potential Solo sequel. Like, I already called this months ago, because it makes sense in that particular regard. The same idea kind of applies here to Obi-Wan, because we've heard rumors before about it being not just 1 movie, but 3 movies, an Obi-Wan trilogy of what happened to him in between dropping off Luke at Owen and Uncle Beru's place, and Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, and then reappearing 19 years later, old and decrepit, and going like, Sand people aren't that not that accurate. 9/11 would beg to differ. But it says here that that's a horrible joke. I apologize. It says here, it's been previously reported that the Obi-Wan movie was going to begin production in January of 2019 with an aim for a 2020 release date. However, a new report suggests that filming will begin in the spring instead. Additionally, the project already has prop modelers, concept artists, storyboard artists, and more already working. According to the report, everything is running smoothly, even though a director or cast has yet to be confirmed. It does say here that director Stephen Daldry was attached to the Obi-Wan movie since late last year, and it's thought that he'd been working on the story since then. As previously noted, neither Lucasfilm or Disney has yet to officially announce that the movie's even happening. So again, this is all rumor and speculation, which is fine. This is a lot of what goes into discussing movies on the internet. It's all rumors and speculations. However, that has not stopped the speculation from spreading. Star Wars fans are eager to see who will be placed in the titular role, and many are hoping that Ewan McGregor will reprise his role from the prequels. Now, he has said he doesn't know anything about the Star Wars universe, but has expressed interest in coming back as Obi-Wan, and it seems it would be a big deal for him if that's the case, and I do think so. I do think that would be a big deal if he comes back. I think he's the only one who could come back. Keep in mind, the last movie was 2005, is now 2018. It's been 13 years since the movie released, which means it's been 14 years since they wrapped production on it. So he's a lot older now. I mean, at this point, he's literally age-wise from when he dropped him off to when we saw Luke. He is like 19 years older. I mean, he's coming up on it. He's got 5 years to go until Luke, or a couple years to go until Luke is of age that we met him on the deserts of Tatooine in 1977. Like, that's the whole thing. It's like, so, obviously, there's a bit of an age gap there. But he's, in terms of like the progression of the character, in terms of the progression of everything, this is kind of where we find ourselves right now. This is kind of where we find ourselves and looking at this. Isn't it funny to think about like that? Like, to think, oh yeah, Luke was like 19 years old, 18, 19 in Star Wars, and here it is from when he was an infant to now, and it's been roughly about the same amount of time in terms of years, only a few years away, it feels like. And by the time this movie would even come out, if they're shooting it in spring of 2019 for probably a Memorial Day release for 2020, then you're looking at 15 years between the releases, between seeing him on screen. So it is interesting to me. But I would argue that it's probably going to happen. It is probably going to happen, and it does make sense as to why. People love Obi-Wan. Ewan McGregor still wants to play the role. He had Fargo, which did well for his career, but he's not doing much else. Trainspotting 2 was a bit of a flop, and an Obi-Wan movie would definitely gross $1 billion. If done well, if done as a Western and open up for a trilogy, yeah, it obviously would gross this kind of money. And this is kind of, again, where Lucasfilm is right now if you just look to see what's going on, right? So we know that Episode 9 is going to wrap up the Skywalker saga, although many could argue that Episode 8 already did that. I'm not harping on it. I did that last night. But look at Rian Johnson, right? Johnson is doing a trilogy. We don't know of what yet, right? With new original characters that he's in no rushed time frame to ever get done. So let's hope for never. But then you got the Game of Thrones guys that are working on a series of films, right? On a series of films. And these guys are coming in and they're going to be doing it that way. So it goes to show you that it's entirely possible, what Lucas, at least I should say in my opinion, Lucasfilm is obviously wanting to create trilogies. They understand that everything works better in threes. They get it. And even though looking at Star Wars like Rogue One, that it was a standalone film, it still was like a side story that tied into A New Hope, still tied into a trilogy. It does make sense as to them going this particular route. I don't think we're going to see many standalone films because it doesn't make a lot of sense to do standalone films. If they're approaching Star Wars like you would see in maybe a Marvel series, it makes sense to kind of have these characters all doing their own thing. Now, let's think of it like this. Just kind of pure speculation before closing out this particular story, right? We know right now that Han Solo takes place before A New Hope, right? We know that old Obi-Wan is alive, right? Right around that same time. We know there's going to be a trilogy of films, and it's entirely possible that Obi-Wan might appear. They might retcon that for Solo. Now, he could sit there and wipe Han Solo's mind or something. And so the tie into the meeting in Mos Eisley, that's a dumb thing. In my mind, it sounded kind of cool. And then I'm like, no, wait, that would be the same thing with like the droids at the end of Revenge of the Sith. It was like, oh, C-3PO and R2-D2. Yeah. Just memory wipe them and send them on their way as kind of like wrapping up a plot hole. They could do something like that. Or he could not know that it's him, or he could be running side, or he could meet Lando Calrissian or something because Lando never met him. I don't know what's going to happen with this, but if they give us the movie, I think it's going to be pretty cool. I think it's going to be pretty grand, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what they do with it. But at this point, I'm just waiting for an official announcement. Who knows when the hell that's going to be? Probably. And I'm, probably like the Tuesday after Memorial Day when the numbers come in for Solo and they see how much money they're made and how much money they're going to be projected to make for the film, as they'll probably start announcing more items coming out, because we're going to start seeing as many Star Wars movies per year probably as Marvel. You know what I mean? 2-3 movies. It just feels like this is where the franchise is going. And look, I know a lot of people out there are going to be like, oh God, no. But if done right, then it can work. It just requires there to be a shepherd leading the flock, and that shepherd is not Kennedy, and we can again revisit that entire rant on another day. All right. So here, let me, okay, I'm just moving some things around real quick. Because I already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, yeah, I'm already at 6 stories. So we're gonna jump in to the Deadpool review stuff right now. Just give me a second to figure all this out, and we're good on that one. Okay, let's see. Hold on here. Just trying to get everything. Okay, well, I'm having a bit of an issue with my computer. All right, so yeah, let's jump into this here, and then we can finish that up and go from there. All right. So, Deadpool 2's reviews just dropped, right? Today is the 14th of May, 2018, and the movie comes out in a couple days. And critics have seen it, and critics have been talking about it, and we finally get all the reviews to know whether or not this movie is any good or not. It's Deadpool. It's Deadpool. Like, Deadpool 1 came out of, not, I don't want to say nowhere. It did very well, $800 million. People loved it. It was a lot of charm and a lot of fun and everything else. This movie, it's rocking an 84%, which is good. It's good, but there's still some problems with it, because we know about the problems involving the story, right? They wanted Cable, but over disagreements with the actor to play him, there was the departure of Tim Miller. And as a result of that, we got the new director, David Leitch, who did, he co-directed John Wick, directed Atomic Blonde. Atomic Blonde was a fun movie, but again, the story was kind of iffy in terms of pacing. It felt very kind of the pacing was very off all the way through, but the action was pretty top notch. Whereas John Wick 2, the other guy who directed that, whose name I forget right now, but the story was a lot better. It was the pacing of the story was great, and the action was fantastic. And you can see why that guy's going on to do John Wick 3, whereas David Leitch is moving on from this over Fast and Furious. So it's interesting to see where things are headed. But let's take a look here again. It's got an average rating of 7.1 out of 10. 61 reviews have been counted, 51 are fresh, and 10 are rotten. So it's the general consensus here is, though it threatens to buckle under the weight of its own meta gags, Deadpool 2 is a gory, gleeful lampoon of the superhero genre, buoyed by Ryan Reynolds' undeniable charm. So that's just kind of the general consensus right now. But as always, if you're new to the RT recap series on this channel, what I do is I go through the top 5 fresh and the top 5 rotten, and do a compare and contrast and more of an analysis of what those possibly could mean. So just in case you don't know what the plot is of the movie, it says here, after surviving a near-fatal bovine attack, a disfigured cafeteria chef, Wade Wilson, struggles to fulfill his dream of becoming Miami's hottest bartender, while also learning to cope with the loss of his sense of taste. Searching to regain his spice for life, as well as the flux capacitor, Wade must battle ninjas, the Yakuza, and a pack of sexually aggressive canines as he journeys around the world to discover the importance of family, friendship, and flavor, finding a new taste for adventure, and earning the coveted coffee mug title of World's Best Lover. So, all right, it doesn't really tell us much, which is fine, which is ultimately fine. So let's take a look here at the top 5 fresh reviews. All right, just what we have right now, just whatever it brings up as the top 5. So first up is Fico Kengiano from Cine Express, giving it a 4 out of 5, saying, better than the first one, funnier and more bananas with better action and better plot. Ryan Reynolds crushes it once again. Okay, so the plot in the first movie was basic, and that was okay. It was an origin story. They wanted to play up that it was an origin story. They wanted to kind of play on tropes, a lot of meta humor, a lot of gags in that regard, but it was a very straightforward story, which worked for it. So expanding the plot for the sequel obviously is the best course of action, and FICO here, thinks that it was better this time around. Now, Rafer Guzman, Rafer, if I mispronounce that, I apologize, from Newsday, says here, the Deadpool movies occasionally push the bounds of taste, but they don't take real comedic twists or real comedic risks. Viewed as more of an action comedy, then Deadpool 2 works passably well. And this is giving it a 2.5 out of 4. So, okay, so just because it's translated from Spanish, so it says that the movies occasionally push the bounds of taste, but don't ever take real risks. Well, in the first movie, I don't know if I'd really say that they pushed the bounds of taste, so to speak. It was obviously playing up a couple different things, but like nothing. I mean, what, the International Women's Day joke, like, where he's taking it, would that be considered the taste, or kind of pushing it to the bounds of taste? I don't quite know what his sensibilities are. I didn't really feel there was much in the first movie that was going to go over and above and overboard. But we'll have to wait and see here. So Molly Freeman from Screen Rant here says, it honors everything that worked in the original Deadpool while delivering more fun and a complete movie experience in Deadpool 2. So that works for me because, again, Tim Miller's absence from the film, Tim Miller's absence from the movie I think is going to be felt. And I have a feeling when we get to the rotten reviews, that probably will come up. And I've seen certain responses from people online talking about Tim Miller's absence having a direct impact, a negative impact on the film itself. But if it took what worked in the first movie, which is obviously Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and the supporting cast of characters like Dopinder and Negasonic Teenage Warhead and Colossus, and even Weasel, even though he won't be in anything else going forward, then that could be, what works for it well. Because, people are like, Dopinder was great. You liked seeing him in it, sort of thing. Now, Peter Travers here from Rolling Stone says, despite a tendency towards elephantitis in story and scope, not to mention blatant franchise pandering, Deadpool 2 still plays like the runt of the comic book litter. We mean that as a compliment. Okay, so you have to love the use of elephantitis in terms of story and scope, because that's generally what happens in sequels. Sequels tend to go bigger, 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 bigger. Sometimes it works in the case, like, let's say, The Dark Knight. Sometimes it doesn't. We can say that probably would be like Thor: The Dark World, you know, in terms of comic book films and whatnot, trying something out that's a little bit different tonally and not really having the impact that they want. So I understand that. Now, he says here that it does also blatant franchise pandering. Well, we saw that in the trailer with the X-Force stuff. We know the X-Force movie is coming. So we know that it was clearly setting up that as a thing going forward, and that probably had a lot to do with the impending Disney buyout of Fox, because they know that they're going to want to be moved into something bigger, maybe get their, get off the ground in their own ensemble stuff, and they're probably going to start toning it down a little bit, which I really hope that they don't. Now, finally, Hugh Armitage from Digital Spy here says, Deadpool 2 has as much heart as the original, and the humor is more consistent, and while we wondered whether Wade Wilson's brand of comedy had its day, the series has moved with the times and feels as relevant and contemporary as it could be, giving it a 4 out of 5. Now, that is interesting, because it says, with as much heart as the original, and the original did have heart, and I think the heart here ties into the kid, ties into the kid that he's trying to save. The humor being more consistent. I felt the humor was maybe a little bit off pitch in the first movie in some particular regards, like the opening scene with him and like the pizza delivery guy, and he's like, well, if you don't have a cat, whose litter box did I just shit in? It felt really, it was funny, but I feel like there should have been more context to that particular joke, and there wasn't really a lot there for that one. So finding a way to kind of make it be more consistent, make the jokes flow a little bit better, it's probably what they spent a lot of time working on in terms of getting Ryan Reynolds' delivery just right. Now, while we wondered whether Wade Wilson, say that 5 times fast, brand of comedy had its day, the series has moved at the times and feels as relevant and contemporary as it could be. So I'm assuming that when it says relevant and contemporary, what it's talking about is not kind of tying itself to previous tropes, tying itself to previous films or previous franchises, but moving into kind of it being self-aware of the current landscape of comic book movies, the current landscape maybe politically, the current landscape involving 20th Century Fox being purchased by the Walt Disney Company. I'm wondering if that has anything to do with it. I know that there was a joke about Disney that they cut out of the movie, so I don't quite know if that has anything ultimately directly brought in, but it could be something that would maybe be considered maybe like kind of a nod, but not directly, although we'll have to wait to find out. So let's take a look here at the negative reviews, because the first one here is Josh Spiegel from Slash Film, and he gave this 3 out of 10, saying here that much like its predecessor, Deadpool 2 is less of a movie than a smirky feature-length meme generator. Well, Josh Spiegel, I know I shouldn't attack the critic. I don't think he liked the first movie, and I read part of his review on Slash Film, and this is a guy who clearly went into it not liking it. You know what I mean? Like, why they would send a guy who didn't like the first movie to see the second movie and then review it, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, unless Slash Film was like, let's be different than everybody else and try to find a way to give it a negative review, so then everyone flocks to read it, and we get the sweet money. Now, Barry Hertz from Globe and Mail says, a movie that feels scribbled in pencil, crayon, drenched in Jolt Cola, and coated with the dust of 1,000 discarded bags of Flaming Hot Cheetos. As it is, Deadpool 2 is a film that is merely aggressively aggressive. Well, Globe and Mail's Barry Hertz, that is mean, man. 2 out of 4 he gives it, which is interesting, because there's a guy over here, he gives it a 2.5 out of 4 and it's considered a fresh review. Here he gives it a 2 out of 4 and it's considered a rotten. You know what? It's just clearly how Rotten Tomatoes works. But, okay, so it feels scribbled in pencil crayon, meaning irreverent, but maybe not grounded. Drenched in Jolt Cola, over the top, right? We've seen some stuff from some of the trailers. And coated with the dust of 1,000 discarded bags of Flaming Hot Cheetos. I have a feeling what that is right there is I have a feeling that has a lot to do with probably like the lore of comics. I think that's the lore of the characters, and Barry Hertz not maybe fully getting it. That's what I'm taking on that one. But saying that it's aggressively aggressive. It does feel over the top. The action does feel more grounded. Look who directed it. right? The action in the first movie was comical, but worked. Tim Miller did it very, very, very just direct, and it worked out okay. Here, you got, the guy behind Atomic Blonde, and it's like 5-minute long, very seamlessly cut together action sequences. Same with the first John Wick. So, yeah, it is going to be different in terms of it being aggressively aggressive. Anyway, Jake Cole from Slant Magazine said, Deadpool 2 muddies the distinction between parodying comic book movie conventions and perfunctorily adhering to them. Okay, so it kind of makes fun of itself but falls into the same traps. One could argue, Jake Cole from Slant Magazine, that that's entirely the point, and the joke just went over your head. One could argue such things. But I get what you're saying there. It's trying to buck the system, buck the trend, but ultimately finds itself riding the same bull and trying to hold on for the same 8 seconds. I get that. It's one of the problems, again, moving into sequels. Now, Mara Reinstein from Us Weekly here says, in 2 years, Deadpool has gone from the scrappy class clown to the annoying wise ass in the back of the room, spewing crude insults to amuse himself. Well, Mara, for a character that feels like the original equivalent of what Reddit became, and then eventually turned into what Reddit is, yeah, I get it. I get it, but he was always kind of firing off quips and one-liners. It does feel that here these things are going to be probably more prevalent because people enjoyed that kind of thing. They enjoyed the off-the-cuff ripping. That's kind of what Ryan Reynolds is good at. And I think they wanted to really play that kind of thing up, and that could be, to Mara here, something that is just not working for her in terms of the type of meta-commentary, fourth-wall-breaking humor that... that Wade Wilson has put before it. And finally here we have Mark Daniel for the Toronto Sun saying Deadpool 2 is kind of like that zany guy you met at a party once. Yeah, he was fun that first time out, but then you meet him again and he's just more of the same, and that's boring. Well, I think that's just a cultural attack on Canadians. Ryan Reynolds is Canadian, and the Toronto Sun is Canadian. So this is clearly Canadian on Canadian crime. But no, okay, so I get it, right? There's the first movie came out, wowed audiences, wowed fans, like, oh wow, they did it for $50 million. It was legitimately good. And then over the course of 2 years, maybe our humor changed, maybe our sense of humor changed. And as a result of that, now it feels like it's just kind of the same old because it was building off of its original roots and not really expanding past that. And that could be one of the things that ultimately leads to it being not what everyone wants, right? And I can get what he's trying to say there ultimately, but at the same time, we can look to see that a lot of the positives kind of counteract the negatives here. It's not that the film and the filmmaking is bad, because no one's commented on that from what I read. Usually there's at least lazy writing. There's a couple things with the writing, but ultimately it boils down to this is more of the same and that is good, and then this is more of the same and that is bad, which is a very weird place to kind of be when you're looking at the ratings and the reviews of this. So I guess ultimately kind of going into it, or at least for you going into it, or for me going into it, it's going to end up being one of those situations where you go, it's going to be more of the same. Now I have to ask myself if that's what I want to see, or if that's something I don't want to see. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a fan of the first movie. First time I saw the movie, I didn't necessarily care for it as much as my other friends did. It took a few more viewings to fully 100% fall in love with it. And if that is more of the same with this particular film, reshoots abound and all that crap, then I'm definitely happy with what we got, and I can't wait to see what happens to it this particular week when I finally am able to actually go and watch the goddamn thing. So I guess if you guys, see it, let me know what you think too. All right, so that wraps up all the stories I've got. So, okay, I agree with you about Mara's defense. The comedy of Deadpool is largely an acquired taste. I completely agree. That was clearly racist towards Canadians. Oh yeah, Canuckistan. Absolutely Canuckistan. Gotta watch out for that, man. That's how they get you. That's where it all goes wrong. that's how these things play out. So yeah. The first movie is great. You're more than happy to watch the sequel. There's definitely that. Yeah, I'm happy to see the sequel too. I really want to know what's going to happen with that in terms of, of how they're going to play it off. Like the trailers, I haven't watched the trailers as much for Deadpool 2 as I Would have liked to. I would have liked to have watched the trailers a little bit more. Well, I mean, I should say, sorry, I haven't watched them as much as I did the first movie. The first movie, I watched the trailers a lot going into it because I really liked the marketing, and I felt that negatively impacted my first experience. So this time around, while I've seen the trailers, I haven't watched them as much. I haven't wanted to show people because back then I was trying to show people, hey, this kind of irreverent thing is happening. This looks pretty cool. Let's do it. And now people know about it. They like it, and they're down to go see it. So, did I see that Paul W.S. Anderson is making a Monster Hunter movie? I did. And I'm on board with that. I really liked the first Resident Evil, the last Resident Evil. I liked Resident Evil 1, 2, 4. I liked 4. I hated 5. 5 was so bad. And I liked number, no, I didn't really, no, was it 5 or 6? Which is the one where they were in like the VR building or whatever. I think that was 5. And there's 7 of those movies, right? 7 or 6 of them. Doesn't matter. The last movie was pretty bad. It was Apocalypse or Final Chapter was pretty bad. But I'm curious to see what Paul W.S. Anderson does with Monster Hunter. Have I ever watched Tales from the Crypt? Oh, dude, yeah, totally. I forgot to mention Tales from the Crypt when talking about Guillermo del Toro. I grew up watching it. That scared the shit out of me on HBO when I was a kid. Just scared the absolute crap out of me. So there's that. So we'll see here. No, Adam, I didn't see your video about Deadpool 2 tracking. I'm sorry. Do I think that Solo boycott will be successful? No, not at all. Not at all. I think once the positive reviews drop here next week and people get hyped up for it, it's going to end up, and, you know, I think that, oh, goddamn, I kind of got distracted there. I think people are going to be hyped up to see it. So, did I see that Russell Howard episode of Good News yet? I did not. Did you send that to mondaymatt.com/submit? I didn't check that one out yet. I haven't seen the episode of Night Gallery called The Doll. Is it on YouTube, Daniel? Can you link me to that one? Resident Evil is okay for what it is. A couple of bottles of booze is a fun time. I'm not saying they were horrible films. I enjoyed legitimately watching them. I remember going to see Resident Evil back in 2002 and then getting my hands on a VCD, cam bootleg of it, and showing it to my friends, you know what I mean? And then before Resident Evil, the final chapter came out, I went to Fry's and I picked up the set of them. It was like $15 for all the other movies. And so I finally caught up because I didn't see number 6 or I think I didn't see number 5 and number 6 or something. And I watched both of those and I did not care for either of them. Mostly because I felt it was trying too hard. Well, what I loved about the first movie and even the fourth movie is that they kind of grounded it in something. It felt like the first movie was grounded and entertaining. The second movie was not so much. So you're voting with your wallet when it comes to Star Wars. Solo isn't getting your money. That's fine, dude. That's entirely up to you. If you want to do that, that's all well and good. I feel that the franchise I think this is, you gotta sit there, I think, and give this one a chance. Right? The Last Jedi, these movies are not made in a vacuum, or they're not made in a bubble. They're made independently from one another. So it's the common theme here is Kathleen Kennedy, but I feel like Ron Howard and his directing style and how he approached it is obviously what I think turned out to be the better choice here. I think that worked out well. The thing is, John Awakens, the Monster Hunter movie, it's just going to be a CG fest anyway. So it's tell a story of a hunter, and that's about it. It's a very simple story. It's the gameplay where those things are kind of fun. Did I see the trailer for Black Klansman? I did not, but I know the reviews came out today. Because I know people watched it at con. I don't like Spike Lee movies. It's just I'm not a Spike Lee fan. So I ultimately, I just don't care. I know I should to some extent probably care, but I just don't. Let me make sure that's okay. That's still good. So, and in my opinion, what are sequels that I like better than the original? Terminator 2. I think that's a pretty good one. Madagascar 2. I hated the first Madagascar. I loved the second one. Despicable Me 2. Again, hated the first movie. I've watched it about probably 3 times now, thinking that there is something wrong with me for not liking Despicable Me 2 or Despicable Me because I like Despicable Me 2 so much. And then I'm like, no, the movie just sucks. The sequel was a lot better. Alien, well, no, I don't know if I'd say Aliens is better than Alien. I love Alien. Aliens is just, it's like, they're both right there, man. I'd argue AVP, Requiem was better than AVP. I'm saying that because I enjoyed that, quite a bit. So the thing is, Jason, well, you still ultimately are going to have to give them, I'm not saying rush out to go see it, but it's like, don't sit there and then pull like the boycott Star Wars because of Rian Johnson and shit. Like, just as much as that sucks and as much as bad as it is with Kathleen Kennedy, I do feel like these are movies we're getting. Like, we're getting Star Wars movies. They're going to be fumbles. So I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt on this one. Of course, someone like World Class Bullshitters is going to call me a shill, making the claim I was paid by Disney. Yeah, right. Empire Strikes Back. Yeah, I'd argue Empire Strikes Back is better than Star Wars. Spider-Man 2 was better than Spider-Man. Yeah. Days of Future Past was better than First Class. Absolutely agree. But then again, is that really like, no, the Wolverine was better than Wolverine, our X-Men Origins Wolverine. So, movies can get better, right? They can get better. Sometimes not everything is done right. Not everything is done correctly. And so they got to get to that point. Winter Soldier and Civil War. Well, I don't know, man. I would say that Winter Soldier was better than First Avenger. But I think in the Civil War was just great. At that point, I consider that like the prequel to Avengers. I don't look at that as being like, I don't look at that as really being a Captain America sequel. So no, RJ, I'm not going to be able to click that link here. You got to send it over to, you got to send it over to mundanemat.com/submit. You think Toy Story 2 is better than Toy Story 1? Well, Toy Story 2, no, I'm going to disagree with you there, man. Like, Toy Story 2 is good, but Toy Story 3 is better than Toy Story 2. So, I think, I'm going to sit there and say Toy Story 3 was better than the other 2 sequels. Revenge of the Sith is better than Attack of the Clones. That is true, General Grievous. X-Men First Class is the only movie you like. No, it's a good movie. It's just saying that Days of Future Past was a better movie overall. That's what I'm saying. You've got, Iron Man 2 wasn't better than Iron Man. Thor 2 wasn't better than Thor. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I don't know if I'd say it's better than Guardians. But they both are really good. I'm not saying anything bad about them. Wrath of Khan is better than Star Trek The Motion Picture. Yeah, a lot of us like to forget that Star Trek The Motion Picture fucking exists. So we don't talk about that. We don't talk about that at all. But all right, guys, I'm going to wrap this thing up because I'm going to be doing a stream of a murder mystery over on Forbidden Knowledge. That's youtube.com/Forbidden Knowledge 2. There will be a link for that on social media here in a few minutes, as well as the Discord if you want to get in on that action. I need to go quickly prep for that, use the restroom and everything else. So if you came in late and you missed any of the stories, a couple of them will be clipped out and posted up on the channel tomorrow morning. Again, I'll be back tomorrow night at 9:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, PST or PDT, depending on who the hell you talk to, and we'll be able to go through the news stories. If you find any news stories you want me to cover or anything you think could be interesting, you can always send it over to mundanemat.com/submit or send it to me on any of the social media links that you see. Wait, that way. There we go. And in the meantime, I will talk to you guys later. If you want to head over to the murder mystery stuff, that will be about 15 minutes until that thing kicks off, and I'll talk to you guys then. Have a good one, and peace.